Hey friends, welcome to Life Made Full. This podcast is centered around business, faith, and family, 3 areas that are dear to our heart. If you are a business owner in ministry, own a family business, or you have a family, join us today around our family table to discuss these topics and more. Welcome back to Life Made Full. We're so glad that you're here today. I feel like we missed an episode.
Yeah.
Am I right on that?
1,000%.
We're back, and we are back with full steam ahead. So we were, I just kind of had this thought. Let's pick up Doug. Do you want me to call you Doug or Douglas?
No preference.
Okay.
Literally.
I think I've asked
Dougie?
you that. Or, Dougie? What?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Probably not that.
Oh yeah, well, that's
Probably
what.
not that.
Doug rules. But let's pick up what we were just talking about, like 5-10 seconds ago, prior to just going live. Can we pick that back up, because that was pretty good. And I think that the audience needs to kind of hear that. Is that okay if we do that? Okay.
Absolutely.
Man, I tell you what, I feel fired up. I feel, since the time lapse between the last podcast to today, I feel like, man, I have so much to say.
Do you think you've grown?
Absolutely, 100%.
It's only been like a month, I think.
I'm telling you, I do. I feel like I have grown as an entrepreneur, as a woman of faith. In all areas, I just feel like I have grown, and thank God for that. Because if we are not growing, we need to be wondering why we're not growing. Some people can just be in this stagnant state, and they're okay with being there, and I'm not. I'm not. So we were talking about just kind of what's been provoking, just kind of lately. And you had said something, which I want you to pick that up. But I would like to go ahead and say what's been at the forefront for me this past month. And it's this, that, well, first, I want to be very, not funny, or very funny. I'm going to go ahead and give the disclaimer, because I'm going to try to keep my hands down, but it's going to be hard for me to keep my hands down. You already know what I'm going to say. It's going to be, because I talk with my hands a lot, and Douglas already said, yes, it will show. 2 of my nails are gone. So let's just get that. Let's just go ahead and clear the air on that and get that over with, that and get that out in the front right now, because I have to talk with my hands. So, yes, usually I am all put together, but we got home late last night. Gosh, it was midnight when we got home. We actually went to Gettysburg, PA. Doug had to go get something there, and we ended up taking a trip, and it was wonderful. So, yes, I'm usually put together, but no, I'm not. So, it's out there. Yes, there are 2 nails missing. Okay. All right. Clear the air on that. So the thing that has been provoking me the most, I would say probably this entire month, is just being true to the core of who I am. Mm-hmm. I mean, that really has been my thought. The most provoking is not shying away from your story, but rather running full force into your story and telling the whole part of it. So the most provoking is that, just really being authentic and true to who I am. Because every single bit of my life has brought me to where we're at today. Even sitting right here has brought me here. And without any of that woven into, the core of who I am, I would not be here, and I would not be who I am. Mm-hmm. So being authentic and true, and how do we do that? My husband and I were having a conversation just last night on the way home, and I'm sure it's okay that he would be fine with me sharing this. We had this conversation that how do we just show up in our authentic self, because it feels so vulnerable. Mm-hmm. It just feels so raw when you expose areas that you have covered for so many years. And how do we do that? And you know, he was talking about it. He said, Michael, we're just wired different. I can't do that, which that again started provoking some thoughts in my my way of thinking, because I would probably think that a lot of people probably think that way. So what makes us different? That some can face it head on, their Goliath head on, because that's what it is. It's a Goliath. And they can lay the axe at the root and cut it down. But then there's some that can't. Do you have any to add to that? What you would think?
Right.
Well, I feel like everybody can. And that's where I think that it's such a, you know, a mindset there. Because I think that everybody can, and I think that there's freedom in that for every person. So I think it's just overcoming your core, you know, motives in your head.
Yes.
And I think it's about having full trust with God and having full trust that he's going to take your story and, you know, use it for whatever his purpose was, and just trusting that God, like, just, it's almost like just letting go and just trusting God with that part, that messiness of getting it out there. And so I think it's just about trusting God with it and getting to that place
Of trusting him.
Yeah.
That you're, you know, that struggle of getting there. And it took me 49 years. I'm 49 years old. And even to get to this place, the struggle to get here has been anything. I mean, it is, but easy.
And would you say that that's because, like, because obviously you've grown spiritually, obviously, throughout these years. And would you say, you know, sharing parts of your story is a big trust factor? Like, do you have to put your trust in God to share that?
Absolutely. I had to come to the place that I no longer, it wasn't that you don't care what people think, but you do have to get in that thought. You do have to get in that mind space that it doesn't matter, because I trust you, God, with this pain. And it's all about repurposing pain.
Yeah.
We've talked about that, repurposing that pain, and how do we repurpose it? Because we can, and God can actually turn that into your greatest testimony of overcoming. And most of the time, those people, so if you're listening to this and you have this incredible, phenomenal story that you know would help somebody, you know would challenge somebody, you know on the other side of that you could bring freedom to somebody's life, but you can't take that first step in sharing what that is, that's a big indicator that's your story, and that you have got to get that out. Because what I'm learning also is most of the time that people, they die with their story inside of them. They die with their music inside of them. It just dies with them because they can't take that first step. Because it's really true what the Bible says. If you take one, God will take the next. You do your part, God will do his part. And it's exposing those wounds and letting God heal them. And in due time, I actually had a conversation with somebody. This was Friday. I had a conversation. I met somebody for coffee, and I had a conversation with them about this very thing, and how that she's 30, her early 30s. She's in her early 30s, and I told her when I was that age, when I was, 32, 33, 34, 35, there would have been no way on God's green earth that I would have ever thought at 49, I'm going to be sharing the entire story. I would have looked at you like you had 15 heads and said, there is no way that I will ever share that. And I had probably been guilty of saying that. There's no way. I would, no, I probably even have said that to you through the years, this one particular part. No way I would ever say that or share that, because what if somebody would think differently of me?
Right.
And again, it goes back to that we care what people think. So you got to get into this mind space that doesn't matter what they think. Because on the other side of that, I'm going to help somebody. On the other side of that, there's going to be healing. There's going to be a breakthrough. And some of the greatest breakthroughs that you're ever going to face in your life is going to be because you faced your Goliath head on. And you slayed him. And you took him down. And what was once holding you captive, holding you in this bondage and these chains, no longer has power over you. It no longer has that power anymore over you. And so what would that look like? Where would you be? Where would you go? Where could you go? I want you to think about that. Where could you go if you no longer carried that weight around with you? Because that's what it is. It's a weight. And so those have just kind of been some provoking thoughts for me that has, been at the forefront, and just really, really placed my feet where I never thought they would be. What's been provoking you? Just that was just food for thought.
Well,
I know a lot. I know you have a lot to say, and I know sometimes you're very reserved.
as in reserved on here? Not necessarily. I just let you kind of ramble. And half the time when we try to interrupt you, there is no interruption.
But I want you to. And I want you to because obviously you two bring this whole different dynamic to the table, which is why it's called, our family table. Like, so what provokes you? What's been the past month? What's been your provoking thoughts?
It's kind of the same thing. I mean, yours is different because of what yours is, but it's just not caring what people think.
How do we get to that place? How did you get to that place?
I'm not there yet.
Well,
I'm trying to get there.
Okay.
I mean, I think I'm there. I am there when it's like face to face. It's just on. I just don't. There's just such a mob of people anymore where you can't share your. You feel like as a Christian you can't share your values on publicly without getting a mob attacking you.
Getting ripped to shreds.
I mean, face to face, I am true to myself and who I am. And that's something I've always been proud to say I am. I don't know.
It's a backbone. I think where we're at, and chime in on this, I think where we're at, just as a whole, is we have to have this brazen, like this backbone inside of us that we've already counted the cost. Because, when you count the cost and you say, okay, I factored in all of that, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because I've already taken in consideration I'm going to be ripped to shreds. I've already taken consideration that I'm going to be rejected. I've already taken in consideration that all of whatever the negativity that somebody might say about me, I've already weighed that in to the equation, and I'm okay.
Yeah, and some of the best thing about all that is if you can get to that point is because you have the comfort in knowing that Jesus also faced every single bit of what you just said.
That's
rejection right. And, the dislike, he's already faced all that too.
And what did he say? He said, but be of good cheer because I have overcome.
Yeah.
So he left us words to live by. He left us words to live by. And if we could just remember that, that in all manner, he walked the earth for 33 and a half years. He was tempted. The Bible says he was tempted in every manner, just like we are. Yeah. But in all of that, he did not sin. He didn't know sin. And he said, and be of good cheer because I have overcome. Therefore, you can. Because you are of me. You are created in my image. And everything that you say matters. It matters. And I'm full. Because, I was telling somebody this as well, that, people, I'm just going to say it like this. And God kind of dropped this down in my spirit. People who do easy things, they're average. But people who do extraordinary, hard, just extraordinary, out of the box things, those people are deep wells. Now let that soak into you just for a second. Like literally, digest that. Because when God kind of dropped that out of my spirit, it was that yes. And what I mean by that is, those who talk and it's like, okay, yeah, it's just kind of generic. It's just like, oh yeah. But then there's those that talk and they speak and it's like a weight that just went to the bottom of your feet. Those are the deep wells. And that's those that, in spite of rejection, in spite of being ripped to shreds, in spite of all of the things that they're going to think, I'm going to go ahead and still do what I know I'm supposed to because I've already counted the cost. That's a deep well. And not many people want to pay the price for that. Not many people will at all. And so we live in this superficial world. I guess that would be the right terminology. We live in this superficial world that is so fake.
Oh, yeah.
That's just so watered down. That when a deep well is standing in front of them, they can't even recognize it. They cannot even recognize it.
Or they do recognize it and they choose to run from it because it would be too much.
Well, that's another thing. Fear has two meanings. Face everything and run, or face everything and rise. So we can either run or rise. It's up to us. We can rise above every occasion that's been in our pathway. We can rise above it. And we will rise. Or we can run. Choice is ours. He gives us the choice. Bounce off that.
I don't know. Well, what you were just saying with the deep and that thing that I was showing you earlier, he does say something about how most people are trying to, in his context, he's talking about reach a wider audience, but it would go the same, like reach a wider group of people trying to fit the mold of the world rather than going deeper into the word and being true to yourself.
Amen.
And if you're building something wider rather than deeper, it's built to fall because it needs to be rooted as deep as possible.
That's
not
right.
wider.
That's right. So that was just confirmation for you that you are right where you need to be, because you had said that prior, like that, just what you heard, it just kind of hit you, and just it's kind of like this. Here's what I always say, that it's like a fire that's out there smoldering. You can say you got a fire and you went out there the next day and that fire is just there. All it takes is for you to go over there and stir that, and it starts right back up. And so that's what it means when we stir these gifts they're already down inside of us. Those gifts are there. The gifts and the callings are without repentance. You can't, God don't take the gifts back. They're there. He don't do that. And so maybe what with you is it's just stirring down in there, and that fire is just about to rise up and it's going to come out. And when it comes out, what does a fire do? What does a fire do?
It's burning air.
Consumes everything. You know what I'm saying. I was trying to be a little deep there. You know what I'm saying. But anyway, but you never did answer. So what has kind of been provoking you this past month?
I thought I answered it. It's just that in general, I guess it's just anymore, just I don't fit the mold of a Christian necessarily. And then, so I've always been more deep into like the hardcore straight edge scene, and I don't fit that mold at all anymore. So I guess it's just, I'm not, Christians aren't that, there's no Christians hardly in that scene. I mean, especially now, the mob comes after you and
Right.
cancels you or whatever you want to call it. So
right now you're just kind of like, you're just trying to find your place. Not that you never lost it, because it's there, but maybe God's just like growing you.
And that's the thing too with Jesus. Going back to, he didn't fit the mold.
No, he did not.
And that's what he was doing, stuff that made no sense to people. He was doing stuff that was so unheard of, unseen.
He broke every tradition.
Right.
Every tradition, he broke it.
Right. So I would say that that's a good place to be if you're not fitting the mold.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we're not all cookie cutters.
No.
There's enough cookie cutters.
So, and people can sometimes, maybe instead they can take that, like you could take that as, well, I'm just still trying to figure out who I am or my place. Not that you are, but I'm just saying, like, people in that kind of mindset when they're like, well, I'm not fitting the mold of religion and being and I'm not fitting here, where do I belong? That's a good place to start, and it's a good place to be.
yeah, like I said, I guess it really doesn't matter. My main thing's just, I guess, publicly on, I don't know. Like I said, face to face, I don't have a problem with having any conversation with a person, and I'm going to tell them exactly who I am, what I stand for, what I believe, and I can care less, because then I can actually have a face to face conversation and defend myself. So, but when it comes to, a text message or sharing it online, but I feel, I don't know, like I share other stuff, so why would I not share that type of stuff? That's what I guess gets me.
Right, right. Which is, I mean, that's a good point. It's a very, very true point. And Douglas, most people, when they're around you, any amount of time, they know right where you stand. I always say, just be around somebody a few minutes. You can tell a lot about somebody in the first 5 minutes of a conversation. You really, really can. You can tell if they're a deep well. You can tell if they're shallow. You can tell if they're authentic. You can just tell if they're not showing up in their true identity and they're trying to just mask. So I always say, you can tell somebody 5 minutes where they pretty much stand. I know for me, I know probably most of the time people already know. I don't know if it's, I have a very strong personality, but my personality hasn't always been this strong. I don't think it has always been. I've always been who I am, don't get me wrong, but not this confident. And that is the difference. I guess I just kind of pieced that together. Is the more confident you become in who you are, the more that you are drenched in your identity. Our identity is hidden in Him, and it always has been, it always will be. The more that we know, that comes back to trust. How do we start the process of trusting? It's from experience. It has to be from experience. It has to go. So you take somebody that's new in their faith, are they going to have the trust as somebody that maybe it's 10 years or 5 years? I don't know the answer to that, but I can say that year after year, you begin to just start to trust, because God's going to work it out. And all things, He's just going to work it out. So through the years, I think confidence builds.
Yeah, and it's just building that relationship with, it's just having that relationship. So where He'll show, where He just keeps showing up time and time again. And that's where you can always look back. So when you're facing the next thing, then that's, as
what's
I know
His track record.
Right. And I know how you'll talk about like your testimony, different things like that. And I think I know that you did something about the staff and how they
Yes.
would write that, and how that just means to do it again.
Do it again.
And so that's the more and more that you can keep saying that, like, and that's probably why the confidence has came with you and how it's progressed over the year, because every single time he just keeps doing it again and doing it again to where, you know, you have no choice. You know, you have no choice but to know.
That's very true.
Yeah.
I have no choice but to know that God's going to work it out.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe anything less than.
Right.
Because you can trace my life and see his fingerprints all over my life. All the way back.
So that's why when, like, he's nudging you, you know, now to tell your story and tell all this.
It's been, yes.
That's exactly why, as much as you question and, you know, because obviously that's our human nature is to immediately be like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to do this. But that's why it's just not going to leave you until you do it, because you know that you have to.
That's been. You're so wise, Christy.
I hear you.
You're so wise, but that's very true, and that just kind of just brings it all in, because it will not leave you. And you know you have to do it. You know that it just weighs on you and weighs on you and weighs on you until you do. And you're 100% correct that, you know, and well, let's just bring it to the forefront. What we're talking about is, you know, I am sharing my story here soon, and it's my flesh is saying, no, you are not.
You can share that too, if anybody wants to tune in.
Yeah.
Next time. That's what there's her next.
Don't put me on the spot like that, Douglas. No.
Well, to be live.
But honestly, going back to that, honestly,
You can link it in.
no, you stop for a second. You're making me lose my train of thought. Where was I at?
Make it flashing on the top of the screen.
My flesh is
Promote
saying,
that.
no, you're not. You know, really and truly, that my flesh is saying no. And so I had to, I actually told my kind of my testimony, and I had to tape it and send it to somebody there was purpose behind that. But it took me 4 hours to hit the send button. It took me 4 hours to hit send. And then afterwards, it was, I can't believe I've done that. I cannot believe I've done that. Why did you do that? Why? And I even told you, like, I don't know.
And
I
then
can
you
do
got
this.
challenged on if to resubmit it one more time. Because you had to send the...
Yes, well, but anyway, I'm saying all that to say that you just got to face your Goliath. There's purpose, repurpose the pain. There's victory on the other side of it. There's freedom, there's breakthrough on the other side of it. And you never know what God's going to take and just turn it around and just completely flip your world upside down just by sharing your testimony, your story. Do you realize, I'm going to say this too, that I was doing this research, which this is kind of totally off topic, but yet it's again on topic. Do you realize that there are only, and I'm pretty confident I've got the number right. I'm like 17%. I think it's somewhere. I mean, it's very super low of women speakers. Do you know that men dominate the platforms for speakers, and women are very low? So women, you are needed. Your voice is needed, especially in the times we're living in today. Your voice is needed. Your story matters and your words matter.
Well, I was just about to say, like, sorry.
What'd you say?
Nothing, go ahead.
He was about to talk, and then I started talking. I was just about to say how you were talking about with the fire and how, like, you have to stir it. I was just going to say how in a time like how we were talking about how in today's world everything is so fake, and it's watered down and it's this and it's that. So if there's ever a time to tell your story, it's now.
Oh.
Because this whole next generation is needing fire stirrers to dig something out of them and make them
Flamethrowers.
Yeah.
Woo! Flamethrowers. Say that, Christy.
And that's what this next generation's needing, is people who will stand up and tell their stories and stand up and stir that next generation, because that's the only hope right now for the next generation. I mean,
it's very true.
Mm-hmm.
That's very true. And I know that you and I have had the conversation that you said that, like, even when you were growing up, how times are so different
oh yeah,
than right now, and you're 29. So, I mean, we're not going back too far.
yeah,
Dude, there's been a major shift just in the last year.
yeah, yeah. It's like
I mean,
progress. Like it's so.
In the last year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You want to go there?
What?
All
No,
of it.
no, not necessarily.
You want to
but
go there? Because we can. just give me permission.
well, it's obvious. I mean,
Right,
you don't even
right.
have to go into details.
We don't.
It's just obvious that we are going that the radical ideologies of America anymore is just getting further and further away from Christian values.
And well, okay. And
And-
some might say, well, for Christian, just value and standards and morals just in general. Would you say that?
Yeah, 100%. I would completely agree, because it is a morale or type of thing that's just so. I mean, it's almost far-fetched anymore to even talk about that.
It really is.
But what I was saying prior to that, to go back, you were talking about like somebody being a testament, or sharing your story. But that's something that I've always kind of lived by. Just the sheer fact that I am in like powerlifting, the hardcore scene, the straight edge scene. So quite honestly, I don't necessarily talk about that stuff up front all the time. I'm an open book if somebody wants to talk to me about it. But I've always felt like if I go down that path, I may do more damage to them in our relationship, where I could eventually lead them to the cross. Whereas if I just am down their throat immediately, it could damage the relationship. And so what I've always felt is like, I'll talk the talk and walk the walk.
Yeah, that's powerful.
And, just as Kanye West, let God flex and show how, my life, and how everybody, anybody that really knows me knows how wild I was and how far I got away from God. And then the moment that I stepped into it, I mean, look how drastically life-changing it's been for me. So that's kind of like the way that I've always kind of thought of it and lived by.
What, can I ask you this? And I mean, obviously you were raised in a Christian home. You were 6 or 7 when I became a Christian. So you just always, it probably feels like to you it just always was. But let me ask you this, because you just brought up a conversation that you went through this wild phase, which you did, and how you drifted away. What brought you back to the cross and rededicate? Like, what was the turning point that you said, okay, enough of, I'm done, like I'm finished doing it my way?
Because I was never I don't know if anybody's ever too far lost, so that's the wrong verbiage, but I don't know. I always knew what I was doing was wrong. I mean, I always felt like that I still had a, relationship with Jesus in my thoughts, or whether that's kind of pounding at my, anytime I do something wrong, my heart would start pounding.
That's conviction.
Well, 100%. But I mean, I always looked at it like he was knocking on me, like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
So,
and
then eventually it got too much to handle. And then Alicia's always wanted to be in church from the time that we got back together, it was always me that was like, no, nope. I hate organized religion, and I still do. That's not what it was about. It's all
Absolutely not.
So that's
It was about
so
him
anytime
breaking every tradition.
yeah. So anytime Alicia would try to bring me to church, I'm just like, I'm not going to an organized church. There's no way possible. And I think it just got too much for me. So that's when I started searching churches. And
So you surrendered.
yeah, I caved.
It's funny because I just was talking this morning about surrender and how that word is so sweet, surrender, and how it's kind of what really bringing it all back into is how that just living a life of surrender. Okay, it's not my will, God, but it's your will. I have to die to my will. That's why Paul said that we have to die daily, because we do. We have to live a surrendered life with no holds barred. Like, it's surrendered. Whatever you want, I want. Whatever it is, I want your will in my life. I want to decrease so you can increase in my life. And so I want to go back, because you said something. Now I got to think what it was, because it was really, really good. Now I want to go back to that.
Well, I'll just comment real quick, because you were saying how, you don't like to be like down your friends' throats or, whatever scene, and I was just thinking how it's one thing to talk about your testimony, but it's another thing to actually show people. And that's what your story does, is it shows people instead of just talking.
Yeah.
And so it's just, again, the importance of actually just telling your story and showing your story.
Absolutely. Every part of it.
Yeah. And another part of what I meant by that is like, just anybody can watch this. Like, there's never been a question of my character outside of anything. Like, like, I've never, like, everybody knows that I love my wife. I love my family. Like, I'm a Christian. I go to church. Everybody knows that. Mm-hmm. So even, minus the material things and how everything in my life's been going like that. That's what I also mean by walk the walk. Like,
you don't try to hide that part of your life. Is basically like everybody knows.
Yeah, like I'm never
where you stand.
There's no question. Like, there's so many
there's so many closet Christian.
Yeah, and let's just be real. Like, there's, and especially like in the gym. Like, I'm in the gym. There's a lot of men that are necessarily not loyal to their family, not just their wife. That affects their kids too. So they're not loyal to their family, and that's never even a question. And
absolutely not
for me. So I think that's one thing that people do see in me, that they've noticed that
you're a man of integrity.
100%.
Right, and that's what I was saying. Like, you don't just talk it, but you're actually showing them. You're actually living the life to show them. Because that's what I'm saying. In the church world, obviously there is a lot of hypocrites. There's a lot of people that's going to stand up and tell you that they're a Christian all day long, and then
Jesus even called them hypocrites. Mm-hmm. He really did. Yeah, and to where that's like how we'll just use the reference of, how you were talking about at the gym and different things. Like, it's like, so there can be Christian men who are talking one way and portraying this life with their marriage and their family, but then they're living a whole different life. Mm-hmm. And that's obviously just doing a disservice to the kingdom in general, because when people are just seeing hypocrites, that's what literally, that's why it has such a bad name. You're 100%.
Is because you're not following through with what you're portraying to be. And
that's actually why he called them hypocrites. Mm-hmm. And he referenced it like this, that every time that you do that, it's you are just bringing reproach back upon his name. Mm-hmm. And it's like plucking the Bible references, it's like plucking his hair from his beard all over it. That's That's how the Bible references that. That when we say we're one way, but then our life speaks a whole different story, or tells a different story. We're just crucifying him all over again, afresh.
Yeah.
And so, many people will never pick up their Bible, but you can be a living, walking Bible in front of them just by living your life according to the scriptures. You don't have to necessarily ever say one word. Just live your life.
Yeah, and living your life. Like, you could be planting seeds that you don't even know. Like, in those, if I don't know your situation, your gym or anything, but I'm just saying, like, if there is married men or different things like that, I mean, you can be planting seeds just by them watching how you're honoring your family. And so you never know the impact that you could be having on, like how you said, it affects kids and different things and other families.
Absolutely.
And when you take your life that serious and you're calling that serious, I think that's when you can unlock so much, because I mean, God can literally, I mean, that's all he needs is just seeds, just people willing to put seeds and seeds.
It's funny, I just thought of the scripture where it says that Paul planted, but Apollos watered, but God gave the increase, or vice versa. And we have to remember that you're sowing seeds. And then maybe somebody's going to come along and pour the water. We never know, but God always gives the increase.
Right.
It's always him that springs that up. And planting seeds, you have to plant seeds in order to have a harvest. You have to plant seeds in order to have a harvest. If you don't plant any seeds, don't expect a harvest. And that goes for that's all areas. That's financial. I mean, we won't even get into that, but we could talk a whole nother thing about that. That's financial. That's your time. I mean, you can unpack that and really go deep with that. So if you're not reaping this harvest, well, you need to have you been planting seeds? Because you're not going to have it without it. And back in the Old Testament, I've been really doing a lot of studying on this, which kind of brings it brought back up, is back then they would have threshing floors. And nobody would have a threshing floor if they didn't have a harvest. You had to have if you had a threshing floor, it was because you had a harvest. And it was a beat, like they would take the wheat and they would beat it, and that threshing floor would wipe out all the impurities. So remember that. That's a whole. That's I believe God's given me a message on that. But yeah, if you want to harvest, you got to plant the seeds.
Yeah, and what I was saying before, like. How I feel like with me, well, I can be a walking testament for somebody. Like, it's gotten to the point where like, you guys don't know this, but this is honest God's truth. Me and Alicia, like, pretty much every month will reflect on, and it's monthly, on just in that month of how much what God's done for us, because it's just been such a drastic change in our lives.
Well, you're pausing and reflecting and not failing to thank him, because we can just get caught up in the day to day and, oh yeah, God did move. Oh yeah. I mean, time and time again that God's moved or worked and, worked things out, and we fail to thank him because it just becomes part of the normal. It's part of the normal but you're pausing to reflect.
Well, yeah, and I can understand that, but I mean, from what we've went through to where we're at.
Let me just say this. You probably feel like you've literally. It's kind of like I ministered at a church in Kentucky a couple weeks back, and you probably feel like you and Alicia, because I know, and we know, but you literally walk through hell and back, like literally walk through hell and back.
100%. And
so,
just when you think that it's full, overfills even more.
Well, it's like the summer fruit. The Bible talks about the summer fruit. Your basket will never, ever be empty. It's just, it's just running over. It's the overflow. You're living in the overflow, and what a great place to be is living in the overflow. But that came with the price. I mean, that you really did. It came with a price to surrender. And that is a hefty price that many can't pay because they don't know how to just say, okay, I surrender it. I'm tired of doing it my own way. I'm tired of going in circles. I'm tired. Like, I'm surrendering. And living that life, it's a heavy price. But it's such a great, the reward. And it's not always monetary. It's just the blessing. It's the blessing of you going down the road and, you're just sitting there and not out of nowhere. God just like drops something down in your spirit. And before you know it, you're just weeping because of his goodness. Or he gives you a picture of where you could have been. But he stopped it. He's done that for me many years ago. Gave me a picture of where I would have been had I not. It's powerful.
It's good stuff.
So pausing and reflecting, it's very important. And it's very good, Dallas. It's very good. He said he'll work all things out. He said, try me and see if I will not open up the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing that you cannot contain. He said, go ahead and try me. Try me and see. Taste and see that I am good. It's good stuff. That's really good. This is some table talk. This is some table talk. Deep thoughts.
I was waiting for Chrissy to say something. She's usually always got something stewing. But I'll just say like what you were saying is it's not all, and it's certainly not always monetary.
No, absolutely not.
Like
most of the
because
time it's not.
me and Alicia's relationship's probably one of the biggest things financially has been great too, but that's been
stronger than it's probably ever been.
1,000%.
And what is that? It's because it's centered on Christ. And he's the missing piece. It's centered on him. That's good.
Yeah, I seen like a diagram. Somebody brought up some diagram about how it's like a triangle, and how God's up here, and then you got the husband and the wife, and how you guys start out down here, and the only way basically to get closer is as you individually just pursued after God, and eventually you go up the triangle, and that's how it's always been intended, is that it's not just supposed to be the husband and the wife, but obviously it's supposed to be husband, wife, God, three working together. And so I thought that was a good diagram that they had pulled up that I had seen a while ago.
It's really good. It's really good. Yeah, most of the time it's not monetary. When monetary comes, great. But most of the time it's not. It's the peace that you have. That maybe everything doesn't look great. Maybe everything around you should not match this peace that you have, because everything around you seems to be going sideways, and that should not match the peace, because you should be wringing your hands and walking the floors, but somehow or another you got peace. And that is what it is. Trust. Most of the time, it goes back to trust. Most of the time it is not monetary. It is not. But like I said, when it comes, that's wonderful, it's great, but it's not, because you can't put a price. Money will buy you a bed, but it will not buy you sleep. It'll buy you a bed, most comfortable bed. But when you lay down at night, it will not buy you sleep. When you're tossing and turning on that bed, when you don't got no peace, when you're worrying, and you got knots in your stomach, anxiety, depression.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it'll buy you a bed. But only God can bring the peace. It's good. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
This might be the best one yet. It's good. I love when we can just be free. We can just be free. It's good. All right. Well, it's been really good. Thank you for joining us on this podcast. You know, when we started these podcasts, we just kind of had a vision, and well, you had a vision. I say,
dude, I wasn't expecting.
You had a vision as far as putting it together. That's what I meant. You had the vision, but we're just that nudge. We're just stepping into that. So thank you for tuning in. If you have not subscribed. Leave us a review on the platforms, whatever platforms. It's on all the platforms. You should take that part over. How do they leave a review? I'm sure people in 2022 know.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can.
They know how to leave a review.
Apple, Spotify.
Can you leave a review on YouTube? Yes, you can.
YouTube. Well, no, you can comment.
That's what
you can follow, like, share.
Comment. Please, if this helped you, because feedback truly helps us, especially when we know, like, we were kind of in alignment. Oh yeah, somebody really needed to hear that. So please comment if this resonated and if this is what you like, and let us know what most hit you. Like
follow us
spoke
on Instagram.
to you. Follow us on Instagram. Yes, that's a big one too.
Share our videos on Instagram.
That's just, just getting us out there, getting that out there, and you could play a part in our story, and we would be forever grateful. So until next time, we hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see everyone on that next one. Bye.